Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Sayyid Akif Shah, lecturer finance at Institute of Business Studies, Kohart University of Science and Technology. The title of this course is Business Research Methods, and the course code for this subject is MS 312. This is lecture number 24. The topic for today's discussion is a case example and data gathering techniques. This is a complete research diagram, and currently we are at step number 7 to design the research and to discuss the data gathering and analysis techniques. The outline of this lecture consists of the discussion of a short case study. Then we will discuss the data gathering techniques, which includes primary data, secondary data, and the observations techniques to collect the primary and secondary data. Let's discuss a case example. A supervisor thinks that low efficiency of machine tools operators is directly linked to the high level of fumes. Fumes are actually the stink, or I can say a strong smell which is dangerous to inhale. And the supervisor thinks that the low efficiency of the machine tools operator is directly linked to the high level of fumes emitted in the workshop. He would like to prove this to the supervisor through a research study, that the high level of fumes in the workshops is leading towards the low efficiency of the machine tool operators in the organization. And the question asks us, would this be a causal or a correlational study, and why? Is this an exploratory, descriptive, or hypothesis testing, analytical or predictive study? Why? What would be the unit of analysis, as we have discussed thoroughly the unit of analysis in my previous lecture? And finally, the question says, would this be a cross-sectional or a longitudinal study? Why? Let's discuss the answer to this case one by one. The question number 1 asks us, would this be a causal or correlational study? This would be a causal study because the operator wants to prove to the supervisor that fumes are causing the operators to have low efficiency, because when there is a strong smell or fumes which is dangerous to inhale in the organization, it will definitely lead towards the low level of efficiency, or we can say the low productivity by the operators working on machines in the workshop. In other words, the machine tool operator is trying to establish the fact that fumes cause low efficiency in the workers. So it is a causal study which states that the low efficiency of the worker is because of the strong smell or fumes in the organization or in the workshop, which is making the workers unable to perform efficiently. Let's discuss question number 2. Is this an exploratory, descriptive, hypothesis testing, or which includes analytical or predictive study, and why? Since we are trying to develop the nexus or a causal relationship between the fumes, high level of fumes in the workshop, and the low productivity of machine operators, therefore it is a hypothesis testing under which it is an analytical study, because the machine tool operators wants to establish that fumes cause low efficiency and convince his workshop supervisor that such analysis, that is to establish the cause and effect relationship between fumes in the workshop and low level of productivity or efficiency of the workers. Question number 3 asks, what would be the unit of analysis and why? So the unit of analysis would be an individual operator, because we can take the data pertaining to the individual machine operator and its efficiency may be judged against the high level and low level of fumes in the workshop. Therefore, the unit of analysis for this study is individual basis data collection. The data will be collected with respect to each operator, and then the conclusion will be made as to whether the operators are less efficient because of fumes emitted in the workshop, or there could be another reason. The question number 4 asks us, would this be a cross-sectional or a longitudinal study? What is cross-sectional and longitudinal? You can go back to the previous lecture and listen to it. I have thoroughly explained the difference between the two. However, this case states that this would be a longitudinal study. Why? Because the data will be gathered at more than one point in time, like at the different level of fumes in the workshop can be judged, and the data pertaining to the low efficiency of the workers may be judged in order to find out the relationship, which is a causal relationship between high level of fumes and low efficiency in the workshop. First, what to do is to take the efficiency of the operators would be assessed at a given rate of fume, whatever the rate of fume is in the emission in the workshop. Then the fumes emitted would be manipulated, like increase or decrease the fume level with varying degrees, and at each manipulation the efficiency of the workers would be again assessed and judged to confirm that high rate of fumes emission causes a drop in the operator's efficiency. Since we are going to take the data regarding the fume at given rate and to check the efficiency of the worker, secondly, we are going to manipulate the fume level to make it more high and then to check the individual operator's efficiency. Similarly, we can reduce the fume level from given rate in order to check the efficiency of the worker. So at different point in time, 1, 2, 3 or whatever, the researchers may decide to find out or to implement the different manipulation rate so that to reach at the conclusion of the given research problem. Therefore, we can say that this study belongs to the longitudinal in nature because we are collecting the data at more than one point in time. So this is the way how a researcher may design the research design and different elements of the research design for his study. Now let's discuss the sources of data from where a researcher may look at to get or to aggregate the data related with different variables of his interest. We can say that in the research process, after the clarification of research design and the theoretical framework, one should go for the sources of data related with the variables of our prime interest, which could be independent, dependent, moderating and mediating variables. So we can find out the data. There could be two main sources. One is known as primary data, another one is known as secondary data. What is a primary data gathering? The primary data, as the name states, that it is an information obtained as a first-hand information by the researcher on variable of interest for the specific purpose of study. The example could be the researcher is taking the structured or unstructured interviews from the subject. Researcher can administer a questionnaire having limited skill to answer the question by using the open-ended question and as well as can use the closed-ended questionnaire. Beside this, the researcher can also utilize the focus group technique to ask the related question with the help of interview or questionnaire from the specific group of study who could answer the variable of prime interest in a better way. The second method is the secondary data sources if the research belongs to a financial analysis research in the business organization. So normally the finance related researches depend upon the secondary data. And what is secondary data? This is a kind of repository of data which is already existing, but the researcher is going to pick the relevant data which is pertinent to the variable of interest of our current study and which could possibly answer the problem at the end of data analysis. So secondary data is actually the information gathered from already existing sources. For example, if a researcher is interested to look at the stock prices data, so the stock exchange website is available to find out the stock prices data in the real time. Similarly, if a researcher is interested to find out the financial ratios of a company, the researcher may look at the balance sheet and income statement of the companies in the annual report, which are already been published by these relevant companies. So such kind of picking up the data pertinent to your research study is known as secondary data. So example could include the company's records and archives. As I have told you, the annual reports of the companies can be studied for extracting the relevant data regarding our variable of prime interest. The government publication may also help us, like the Security and Exchange Commission of Pakistan is available, and as well as the same organization is available around the globe with the name of Security and Exchange Commission, which normally publish the data regarding the public's limited companies and as well as private limited companies. Besides that, this organization may also have the data related with non-governmental organization. Similarly, industry analysis offered by the media and as well as by the rating agencies like Moody, Fitch, and the Dun and Bradstreet type of companies, which analyze the companies and industries data, from where we can extract the variable of interest of our study. We can also look the secondary data at the website of the companies and different other sources. And finally, the internet source can help us to directly find out the data which are relevant and authentic for our study. So secondary data is already published and already gathered and existing in a raw form. The researcher just extract the relevant data pertaining to his study. Whereas the primary data, the researcher is supposed to collect the first-hand information with the help of interviews, questionnaire, and focus group techniques. Data collection method, primary method are interviewing, questionnaire, and observation, which shall be discussed shortly. Number first is interview based. So there are basically two types of interview. One is known as unstructured interview to get the relevant information or data, and the other one is known as the structured interview. What is unstructured interviews? The unstructured interviews, as the name says, that there is not standardized question as so labeled, because the interviewer does not enter the interview setting with a planned sequence of question. There is no planned sequence of question to be asked from the respondent. Rather, these are unstructured, and with the help of different techniques, the researchers pinpoint the relevant questions later on. So the objective of the unstructured interview is to bring some preliminary issues to the surface so that the researcher can determine what variables need further and in-depth investigation. Let's say if the researcher is interested to find out the motivation level or the job satisfaction level of the employees. So the employees normally feel hesitation and shyness to express their feeling about the top management or the organization, even though if they are dissatisfied from their job, because such kind of responses may lead towards the top management, which can be adversely which can turn out to be in adversity to the employee later on, because the top management may come to know that the so and so employees are not interested and dissatisfied with the policies of the top management. So they might decide that if they are going to downsize their staff level, so those will be the first option to be fired. So therefore, in the unstructured interviews, the interviewer first try to make the interviewee assured that their responses will be anonymous and remain in the private custody of the researcher so that they may feel easy to answer the relevant question. And starting from the broader perspective to the narrowed down in-depth investigation, the researcher may apply different techniques to narrow down its investigation so that the specific variables may be asked from the interviewees and the relevant data could be collected. The second mechanism is to conduct a research is the structured interviews. As the name states, these are standardized questions or interviews. And the structured interviews are those which are conducted when it is known at the outside what information is needed. Like these are already developed, well-established questions, and these clearly state that what kind of information is needed from the subject. The interviewer normally has a list of predetermined questions to be asked of the respondent. So these kind of interviews are termed as structured interviews because the design of the question already exists and there is a clear-cut question answer session between the interviewer and the interviewee regarding the subject matter. Let's discuss the questionnaire type. We can also administer a questionnaire, and there could be two types of question. One is known as open-ended question and the other one is the close-ended question. In the open-ended question, the researcher have the broader perspective to ask the broad idea about the situation, and the respondents normally answer in their own fashion. It requires a response with a more depth and lengthier response. The respondent have the option to answer in their own way in the open statements. Such responses may further be scrutinized later on by the researcher. For example, generally asked during the exploratory research, a question can be asked by or administered in the questionnaire like, how do you feel about your employer or organization? So questionnaires are basically a kind of question paper having multiple questions related to the subject or phenomena, which can be handed over to the respondent, and the respondent may reply on those questions in his or her own understanding. So basically there are no question answer session directly between the interviewer and interviewee. Rather, a question paper based narrations and questions are mentioned on a questionnaire where the respondent answer regarding the area of research study. So one of the example could be for open-ended question is as mentioned in the yellow highlighted. How do you feel about your employers or organization? Now the respondent can answer in his or her own language and way and pattern. The second method is close-ended questions. These are already provides the responses to choice from, like multiple choice questions are given to the respondent so that they can pick the relevant answer to a particular question. For example, if the same question may be asked that how do you feel about your employer or organization, and you have only two choices to select in, like good or bad, so the respondent either will take the good sign or the respondent may opt for the bad option, and such kind of data will later on be injected in the different softwares so that to make data analysis. The third method is the observation method to get the primary data. And observation survey says it is possible to gather data without asking questions from the respondent and as well as without taking any interviews. Like people can be observed in the natural environment. There might be certain research studies which could be conducted in the natural work environment or in a lab setting, and their activities and behaviors can be noted and recorded. Like for example, we are going to make a study or to conduct a study in a banking organization, and the researcher is interested to check the behavior or to notice or observe the behavior of the cashier and the counter person with their clients whenever there is any particular deal going on or discussion going on. And specifically, the researcher may notice that either the banking employees or the cashier is welcoming the next client, or his behavior or way of working or doing work is quite weird and strange, or in angry mood, or whatever gesture he or she may be presenting to the client. So when the researcher is going in a practical natural work environment and trying to observe the subjects or employees' motivational level, their behavior, their attitude, and their way of dealing with the clients, such kind of data gathering without the notification of the respondent is known as observation-based data collection techniques, and which come in the realm of primary data collection. So the people movements, like their work habits, how do they work, what are their ethical values, what are their official tone and language, their facial expressions of joy and anger. It could be judged in a natural work environment, either they are angry or they are in joy mood, and other emotions and body language can be observed in a natural work environment by the researcher if they are using the observational techniques to gather the data. So this was all about regarding the data collection techniques, which are primary, secondary, and as well as inside the primary techniques, observations and questionnaire and interviewing techniques together to collect the data. Here we have finalized the discussion regarding the research design and how to conduct a research and how to collect the data by using different data collection techniques which are pertinent to the research or broad problem area of our study. Even still, if you have any confusion, you can ask question on my email or post them on KCMS. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. Good luck for the day. Allah Hafiz.